here is Vern Foum. Vern worked as an entrepreneur from 1962 until the year 2000 as an owner of an ag supply business. So he's worked with farmers, selling them their products, sort of like the work many people do in my hometown. He retired in 2000, but it says he was compelled to keep on going and to get involved in something else. So he went into land development and became a realtor. He has been married for 51 years and lives with his wife in Iowa City and his 2 daughters who are now married, and he also has 3 grandchildren. He enjoys working, and that was the first hobby that he mentioned. He enjoys working because he's able to be with people and help them buy and sell their home. And he also enjoys golfing and doing some volunteer work. So please welcome Vern Foum.
You know, I have a grandson that's graduating from law school here in May, so he's the same age as all you young students. So that's how old I am. But I have a young mind and a young heart, so I love to be with young people, and it was a pleasure to be at the table here because I was asking them some questions and they responded immediately. So it's great. I wanted to share with you, I was asked actually to share with you some things about being a business owner or an entrepreneur, and how is it different by being a Christian versus being an unbeliever. And to set the stage for that, I thought maybe I'd just tell you a little bit of my background and how I come to know Christ and what a difference it made in my life. And this happened a long time ago. It happened when I was a teenager. I actually, my father was a great example to me. He went through the Depression, and there's a lot of lessons learned in the Great Depression. He had bought a farm just before the Depression started in, at 29, 30. And he bought it and he paid about $400 an acre for it. And about a year after he bought it, it went down because we got into the Depression. It's a little bit like now, only it was, I think, worse. It went down to probably $150 an acre. And most of the people around the area actually gave it back to whoever they bought it from. If it was bought on a contract from another person, that was fine. Or if it was bought from a bank, they gave it back to the bank, just like they're doing now with the houses. He chose the other route. He said, I gave my word, and he said, I'm going to pay for it, one way or the other, and I'll work at it until I die. Which is about what happened, because it took him all his life to get it paid for, because it was a tough debt there to overcome. But he taught me that never go back on what you originally committed to. And but he did die very young. He died at 61, and I was 14 at the time. And so then suddenly I was kind of propelled into making my own decisions. And when I had to do that, I grew up very fast, and it helped me. Eventually, actually, it was a tragedy, but it helped me develop to where I am today. And I watched my mother primarily through this whole process, because as he died, of course, very tragic for her. But then on top of that, and I don't want to tell you this to make you feel sorry for me, but my sister then got killed in a car accident about a year later, and all 3 of her children. And the fact was that would be my mother's grandkids, my mother's daughter, which is probably the worst thing in the world. But all through this whole thing, time, this was all happening. I was at home because I was only 14, 15 years old, and I was living with her then, and saw her go through that. And she always kept the faith, and she always had. She never criticized God for dealing this all to her. And she actually kept the faith, and she lived to be 96 years old. And this happened when she was about 60. And really, it's quite an example for me to learn from that, because without having Christ in her life, I don't think she could have existed, because every night she prayed. she got a lot of consolation out of that. Of course, at 14, I didn't think too much of it. I didn't think too much of praying at that point, because it wasn't like a young person to serve yourself. When you're young like this, you don't think too much about dying. You don't think too much about what impressions you're going to be making in the future. But it's very important to hold on to your Christian faith when you're having problems. And she certainly went through that, but she came out of it and she lived a normal life. And of course, when I got to be about 20 years old, I got married and left home. So that was the end of it. By that time, she was over it, and she really was able to help me a lot and put my values. So that's kind of the background, and that's how I became a Christian. Because after I saw that happen, I thought, I need to do that too, and I need to hold on to that. And so I started to get into business then when I got married at a fairly young age. To be married 51 years, I was 20 when I got married. So back in those days, though, it was pretty common to get married younger. But my wife and I have enjoyed a wonderful life together for 51 years, and we've been fortunate that our children and our grandchildren all grown up in the faith, which is one of our goals and should be one of your goals as a parent, as you become parents, because it's very important. But anyway, getting on to the business side of it then, what challenges does a Christian business leader have that a non-Christian would not have? And the basic things that would be challenging would be the values, because a non-Christian probably wouldn't have the same values as a Christian, just because if you're a true Christian, you live for Christ, you want to do His will, you want to follow His ways, and those of you that know about this, His ways was to be a non-sinner. He never sinned in His life, and we are not that way. Because we're not as perfect as He is. We sin every day, and I sin every day. But you try to actually, when you come out of it, you try to ask for forgiveness, and by believing in that faith, you do get the forgiveness, because that's why He eventually died on the cross for us. So the challenges would be, how do you handle the things that, when you're an owner of a business like myself, at one point I had 75 employees, so I did have a lot of stress on me, and had a lot of success. And that's probably the first thing, is how do you handle success? Because there's a lot of temptations when you are successful. And I'm sure you folks will all be successful because of your leadership positions right now. And the young lady I sat next to there was going to be a doctor, and she's going to have a lot of challenges because of the time involved. And how do you balance time with family and that kind of thing, and time with a husband? And, so how you handle success is one of the traits. And my recommendation is how you handle it is you don't change. You act the same way you acted before you were successful. And you don't snub people, you don't run with a different crowd. You run with the same friends that you grew up with, if possible. I know that students probably change schools and change jobs, and you lose those friends, but once you make friends in the business world, as you get more successful, your friendship goes up. It's like people like to hang with leaders. They like to hang with successful people. And what will happen is you'll have a lot of people hanging with you that you're probably not too proud of. And so I think it's good to choose your friends wisely. Ego gets in the way too. When you're successful, you get to be popular, and it's kind of like success. It's an ego, and you want to be humble. Dan, you talked about it's easy to